Should you build a personal brand or a business brand? We are going to unpack this age-old question that oftentimes just stops people in their tracks. They just won't take action on their business because they don't know what to call their business. And today, I'm going to tell you the 5 considerations or questions you need to ask in order to make that decision. Before we get started, I want to make sure that you go and download my 30-day online income roadmap. This is a step-by-step checklist that's going to show you how to go from no idea, no audience, no nothing, no anything online, no website, no product, nothing, to starting to earn a little bit of income online. I think you could probably earn at least $500 in the next 30 days if you follow this system step by step. It's just a checklist. You don't have to read a ton of stuff. It literally just takes you week by week what I would be doing every single week if I were starting completely from zero. So go check that out. It's at brazenist.com/roadmap, and I'll also have the link down below for you to click over and get that downloaded. Now let's go to the show. Okay. Personal brand versus business brand. Which one is the right choice for you? As you know, I have recently launched Brazenist, which is where I talk about online business, building an automated income, building an online authority brand, traveling the world, work and travel, work less, earn more, travel often, live brazen. That's our whole ethos around here. I took a long time to make that decision around if I wanted to launch Brazenist or if I wanted to launch BrookeRoberts.co. In fact, I actually sat on this for a very long time. It stopped me from taking action on so many occasions. It's embarrassing actually at this point. And I don't want you guys to sit in this puddle of indecision. I want you to have the information and be able to sit down, do the reflective work, the self-awareness work to figure out what's the right move for you, and then just make a decision and move forward, and then make the next decision and the next decision. As an entrepreneur, you are going to have a lot of decisions to make, and so this is just one of many that you will have to consider that isn't easy, but it is something that you're just going to have to go for it and just see what happens. The name of my business, Yoga Travel Tree, this was actually something that I really struggled with in the early days. I would wring my hands about, oh, maybe I shouldn't be doing all this stuff because maybe I'm going to change the name. And so I don't want you to sit in that land of indecision. So we're going to unpack the 5 considerations or 5 questions you need to ask yourself when making this initial decision. But before we do that, there are 3 things I want you to note. Whatever you decide, you can change your mind. That's the beautiful part of being your own boss and getting to run the show, having free will and being able to decide, you know what, made that decision, wasn't the best decision. I'm going to do something different now. I'm going to shift gears. I'm going to pivot, if you will. And so that's totally acceptable for you to choose one path and decide in 6 months, in a year, in 5 years that it wasn't the right path and you want to shift. I have seen so many people with online business brands who then shifted it over to their personal brand. I've seen personal brands shift into wanting to build out a business under a business name. And so it can go both ways. You can do both at the same time. There's a lot of ways you can slice and dice this. And the cool part about this is that there's no rule. There's no one right way, which is the second point I want to make. There's no right answer. I'm not going to tell you, yes, that is a good decision for you, or no, that was a bad decision. You have to make the decision as now a business owner, as a CEO, as a founder, of deciding what feels right, what feels intuitive, what is the best choice based on the data and information that you have right now. And then you just move forward with that information. As you're going to hear with the 5 considerations or the 5 questions, is that there are a lot of variables that are going to make you make a certain decision versus what I would make a certain decision. And our variables in that decision-making process are going to be so different that it may result in a different answer that is right for each of us. So I don't want you to think like, oh, I see everybody doing all these personal brands and so I should do it. Or I see all these other people doing these business brands and that's the right way to go. There's no right way. Just pick one and move forward. And the last thing I'll say is that regardless of the path you choose moving forward, you are still going to have to show up in some capacity to build out the business model that I am teaching you to build. So this online information, knowledge commerce business model that is all about giving away free content, free value upfront through content marketing, building, a relationship, know, like, and trust with people. All of these factors are still going to require you to, quote, show up. Now, show up doesn't mean you have to do 50 Instagram stories every day, or you have to be, a gregarious YouTuber, or any of these sort of big, bold things that you might think of when you think of like an online brand. But it is going to require for you to share your knowledge, your expertise, the value that you bring to your community. You're going to have to show up online in some capacity. So there's no kind of saying, oh, I'll build a business brand and then saying, okay, then I don't have to do anything. You're still going to have to do some things, but just how you position it around your brand might be a little different. Let me define what I mean when I say personal brand versus a business brand. So a personal brand is all around your name, your given name, if you will. So in my case, Brooke Roberts, building a brand that is called Brooke Roberts, brookeroberts.co, Brooke Roberts Creative, Brooke Roberts Media, like Brooke Roberts Consulting. All of those would be around my name and my personal brand, and my name being attached to the company name. Business brands are names that you make up or that you create, right? So Inside Study Abroad is a business brand. Yoga Travel Tree was a business brand. The Study Abroad Journal, Brazenist. These are all of my companies, and they all have a business brand. And at the end, I'm going to describe and tell you what were the key factors that made me decide to launch Brazenist versus Brooke Roberts Creative or Brooke Roberts Media or Brooke Roberts Consulting, why I decided to go with Brazenist instead. But those are all my business brands. You could also have a business brand that is very much personality driven. So for instance, I could have launched this business as The New Dorothy, which is my Instagram handle, but I would still be very much driven by Brooke and my identity around The New Dorothy and growing up in Kansas and that whole shtick, right? So that would still be driven by my personality and me showing up. Inside Study Abroad also, for several years, it was personality driven. It was all centralized around the content I created, me showing up. And in the last 3 or 4 years, I've actually started bringing on other people, contributors to the blog, co-hosts for the podcast, other people teaching workshops. Coaching inside of our programs is led by other people. So I'm not the only person making the content and the value that we bring. I'm not the only person providing that. I'm not the quote unquote thought leader, the only thought leader. There are other people contributing to that dialogue and that content. And so that really does help separate business versus the personality versus the personal brand. The other thing to keep in mind is that even if you see yourself building a business brand that has its own name, but you're the leader and the founder, and you want to build something that's more of like a mid-sized company that has a big reach, lots of partners, bigger financial goals, maybe even, and bigger reach, you still might have to show up and sort of be a front-facing personality. Maybe not in a YouTube video or maybe not on a podcast, but you still are going to have to show up and be the person that other companies know, like, and trust so that they want to work with your company. A story I like to tell is several years ago, a friend of mine was building his company. He talked about how he was really struggling to sort of get some traction in some different ways. And I told him, I said, right now in our industry, people don't know you. They don't know who you are as a person. They don't feel any kind of affinity towards you. And I think every industry can be like this, but our industry, it's very relationship driven. I said, you have to get people to love you. I think that's what I said to him. With that, he went on a year-long mission to make sure that people knew him, knew his story, that he was building these relationships. He was traveling all over the United States and the world, meeting in the company offices and headquarters, and just chatting with people people and learning about how they could help them and how they could work together. And that it showed in dividends. The lesson there is that people want to buy from people, and they want to buy from people that they know, that they like, and they trust, even if it's inside of a business brand. Nobody wants to buy from like a sterile, personality-less brand. Like even if you think about the big Fortune 500 type brands like a Pepsi, they're not just Pepsi, they bring on celebrities that you know, like, and trust to be in their commercials and be spokespeople and athletes and all these things. So even they know that they have to build affinity through other humans and other people that you really love and trust. That's just something to keep in mind about personal brand versus business brand. In either scenario, there is an element of relationship building that know, like, and trust factor, regardless if your name is on the masthead or not. So let's dive into the 5 considerations or 5 questions you need to ask or consider when making this decision about launching a personal brand versus launching a business brand. The first one is, what is your vision for your business? Where do you see this company is going based on what you know right now? Obviously, we can't predict the future. We don't know what's going to come. As you will learn as a business owner, you will see lots of pivots and new opportunities that are presented, new ideas that come to you later on as you get more and more into your business. And so what you envision right now is likely not going to be what it becomes or everything it can become in the future, but you have to make decisions based on the data you have right now. And so if somebody to ask you, where do you see your business in 5 years, or what kind of content do you see yourself creating? What kind of products do you see yourself creating? Do you see yourself being able to, quote unquote, pass the mic to somebody else who can be a face, be a thought leader, be a content creator within your brand? Do you see all those things happening, or do you see yourself being like the face and the person of your brand long term for perpetuity? Which both are fine, both are great, but you have to decide how you see that rolling out moving forward. Because you could still be the face and personality of your brand, but you could have a bunch of people behind you, a whole team of basically ghost writing or ghost creating for you, where they're outlining content and they're drafting blog posts and they are editing all of your podcasts and your videos and coming up with ideas and outlining them for you so that you can come in and then do the polish. People still do that today around their personal brand. They have a whole team that helps them come up with ideas and create new things. So both are great. Both are awesome options. You just have to decide where you see yourself going, where you see yourself fitting into that. The second consideration is, do you need separation, both mentally and, quote, digitally or even physically, between you and the business? So this was a really big one for me. Another way to ask this is, do you actually want a personal brand? The reason I ask this is because when you build a personal brand that is your name on the masthead and like that's what everybody sees moving forward, there's a lot of responsibility on you because it's literally your name on everything. The other side of it is that there's responsibility and sometimes expectation on you actually being the one that shows up. So imagine paying thousands of dollars to go to a big Tony Robbins event and Tony Robbins wasn't there. You'd be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I just bought a Tony Robbins thing. Why am I not getting the creme de la creme? Why am I not getting the guy? Same thing if you went to, Oprah does these big tours sometimes where she brings in speakers and hosts these huge events in different cities. Can you imagine going to one of these Oprah live events and then Oprah not being there? You'd be like, wait a minute, this is an Oprah event. Why am I not seeing the woman herself? So there's sometimes an expectation on you having to show up and be there because people want you. That you are the brand, so they want you to show up. I found this to be a super important question because I struggle with depression. It's something I've chatted about on various platforms in different places, but I've really had to come to terms with how limiting my depression can be, and I have to accept that that is the reality of my existence. It took me a long time to accept that. I should probably do a whole other episode about my depression journey and battle, etc. But I knew that I needed that mental separation. I knew that there would be times, sometimes weeks at a time, where I would not have the energy, the mental capacity, the wherewithal to be able to show up because of my depression. And I didn't want then my my business to be hamstrung by my depression. And so I needed it to sort of exist away from me so it could be out there moving and grooving in certain ways, using automation, using outsourcing, using systems and tools that can help automate some things. And then I could mentally and digitally remove myself. I just needed that barrier. I knew I wanted to be able to post pictures of my dog Barnaby and it not be like a big decision on like, is this going to impact the brand or not? It's like, no, I just want to post whatever I post over on my personal pages and accounts. And then I can be more focused and strategic about what I say and do and present and push out. And team members I can bring onto those platforms to manage them. I can do that over on a branded section. That you can create boundaries no matter which option you choose. And it is your responsibility as a business owner to create boundaries. You do not get out of this if you choose to do a personal brand and you're like, it's fine, I have no boundaries and I'll do whatever. No, we do not want to do whatever, because remember, we want to work less as well as earn more. And so I don't want you to think, oh, if I build a personal brand, I'm just showing up constantly all the time. And if I build a business brand, then I don't have to do that. Like I said, you're still going to have to show up. And in both cases, you still need to create boundaries. And so there's that takes a lot of self-awareness, a lot of EQ on your part to figure out where do you need to establish those boundaries, and then how do you build a system and an ecosystem around yourself so that you can still deliver on your promise as a business and as the creator, but also protect your mind, protect your happiness and your just enjoyment of your life. And the cool thing about it is that when you run your own business, you make the rules. So whatever boundaries you set, nobody's going to say like, nope, you set the wrong boundaries. That's not okay. You make the rules, so you get to decide. The third consideration or question is, will the marketing and sales process and experience, is it going to feel easy or hard depending on which path you choose? So for you, I really like the idea of just showing up and telling stories and telling about my own experiences and really showing up and using my own voice as my sales copy and the way I share content. I just want it to be my voice. And so you think a personal brand is really where that fits, and it's going to feel easy and smooth and not sleazy, and that just feels really good to you. Whereas with a business brand, you might be like, no, I mean, I want to be able to use my voice, but I also want to be able to curate and highlight other voices and other opinions and other points of view and showcase other successes and wins that help bolster sort of what I create. And maybe that feels better doing it under a business brand. Again, I will say this 50 times in this episode, but there's no one right way. There's no one right answer. And again, it sort of comes down to a gut check for you. For me, I feel like it's either way, it feels authentic. Either way, it feels like a natural conversation. And I'm fine, and that feels good to me. So I could have gone either way. Another element of this is thinking about when you are writing marketing copy or putting content and information out there, there might be things where you say, I did this, and I want you, and I, where you're using your first person pronoun because it's you're the brand. Whereas when it's a business brand, you might see yourself needing to start saying things like, we do this and we want this, because you do want it to be bigger and beyond what you are doing as the creator, as the founder. So it's the team effort. How does that feel to you? If sometimes for some people, if they don't do it right, the we line of like, we do this and we believe this can start to feel a little cold and detached. Whereas I do this and I want this for you, and using that pronoun can sometimes feel single-minded and self-oriented in some ways. Again, there's no right answer, but there's certain things you can unpack there with like understanding the I versus the we. The fourth consideration is, do you want to sell your business someday? Now, this is more tactical, I guess, and just kind of getting down to the brass tacks of things, but this is the big consideration. When you start a business, you want, I imagine, to be able to quote unquote retire someday or to exit that business in some capacity. And typically an exit comes in two ways. You either close the business or you sell the business if you are the owner. And I will say, on the surface, selling a personal brand, a brand and a business that has your name on the masthead, that is much harder than selling a branded business where it's its own ecosystem and it does its own thing. The best option you'll have as a personal brand to sell it would be to sell IP or elements that you've created inside the brand. So maybe you sell your course content, or you sell the community list that you've built, or you sell a Facebook group, a huge Facebook group that you've curated, or you sell the Instagram page that you built with your name on it. You'd have to think about the assets that you've built within your personal brand business and then feeling out if the marketplace wants to buy those things, versus if it's a branded thing, you can sell an Instagram account that's not attached to you much easier. You can sell the whole business entity that's not you. Some examples of this, so two that have actually done exits where they've sold their business, where they were also the face of their brand, but they used a brand name, are Mimi Icon. So she was a co-founder of Luxy Hair. They built this huge YouTube channel and a huge multi-million-dollar company selling hair extensions. And they used YouTube tutorials to help drive that business and grow that brand. And of course, an Instagram account as well. But she was the face of it. She was the one on all the YouTube videos doing these tutorials, showing people how to use the hair extensions, how to style the hair, all the things. And when they talked about this on a podcast, her and her husband, who they co-founded it together, about that exit, about selling their company. And they talked about how this was a big sticking point, even in the sale and in the deal that they made to sell the company, was that they were like, no, there will be a clear break. Mimi's not going to stay on as like the spokesperson. They had to find a mutually beneficial, pure exit and separation, but she was able to do it. And so she built Luxy Hair, not Mimi Icon Hair. And so because they built Luxy Hair, they were able to sell it versus if they attached their actual name to it. Another example of this is the company Girl Boss. If you're familiar with Sophia Amoruso, she was originally the founder of Nasty Gal, and then later she wrote a book called Girl Boss, and then it became a business and sort of a media company, an event company, and it got purchased by a venture capital firm. And in that deal, she stayed on for a while, but then got to exit the business. And so she built a business with a brand name, Girl Boss, and was able to sell it and exit completely without sacrificing her name, right? So it wasn't called Sophia Amoruso, although she's now done that. So she's one of those people who built the business brand and then transitioned into a personal brand after selling the business. But that is an example of a brand where there's a person that's definitely the face of it, but still being able to sell it. And then another example where they haven't sold, but they are definitely poised to be able to do something like this if they were interested, is a YouTube channel and a website I love to follow. It's called The Financial Diet, and their co-founder and their primary host of their YouTube channel and their podcast is Chelsea Fagan. And she's very much like the personality of the business, but it is a business brand, and she's the founder of that brand. But she and her co-founder could sell that brand and divorce, their personal brands from that business. And they keep it very separate. They have a separate Instagram, YouTube, all the places. That's a great example of having a personality-driven brand, but keeping it very, very separate. So definitely go check those out if you're curious about what that can look like. And I have no idea how Luxy Hair and how Girl Boss are doing now that both of their sort of faces of the brands and the business are no longer involved. Who knows? I don't see their financials, but I know that there was at least a successful exit on the part of the founders. The last consideration is, how does it sound to you? Now, this is more about vanity, I think, than anything else, but it is something to think about. How do you want it to sound when you are introduced as a speaker at an event, or your bio is in a program as a keynote speaker, or what does your LinkedIn headline say about you? Do you want it to say Brooke Roberts, founder of, or Brooke Roberts, founder of Brooke Roberts? There's just something about how that sounds to you and how you want to be able to introduce yourself. There's thinking about that 30-second elevator pitch in terms of your business and your brand and your place as it relates to the business. So I came up with a little example of a business idea that someone could have. And it's the same thing, but I'm going to describe it in two different ways. One is where it's a business name, and one is where it's a personal brand name. I use myself, and it's a fake company. I just made it up. The first scenario is the business brand. Brooke Roberts is the founder of ztravelers.com, a travel resource designed to inspire and prepare Gen Z for the future of travel. So that is the bio or the headline or whatever you would say for that version, right? She's the founder of Z Travelers. Or let's say I did the same thing, but I did it under my personal name, brookeroberts.co. So Brooke is a travel writer and curates travel inspiration and resources for Generation Z on her blog, brookeroberts.co. Obviously, I'm not the best writer, and you could write a better one for both of these, but that's sort of the same concept of what I'm doing on each of those platforms, but how it would sound if you were describing it to people. Both are great. Like, both would be totally respectable and could be a speaker, could be a keynote speaker, could be great bios for all the things. It could be on the back of your book. All of those work. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying, how does each one feel to you, and how do you want it? What do you want to be able to say is your business when you do tell someone, when they ask you, hey, what do you do? You're going to say, oh, I'm the founder of, or hey, I create blah, blah, blah. Different ways you're going to describe it, whether or not you are the business name or the personal brand. I could have called Brazenist and it could have sounded something like this. Brooke Roberts is the founder of brookeroberts.co, where she teaches people how to build an online automated business from anywhere in the world. It's almost the same exact tagline, except instead of it being brazenist.com, it would be brookeroberts.co. Both are fine. Both still work great. So once again, there's no right answer. I just want you to have these 5 considerations in mind. So just to recap, here are the 5 considerations. What is your future vision of your business, and where can you imagine it going in the future? Do you need separation mentally, digitally, physically between you and your business? Will the marketing and sales feel easy or harder in either of these options? Do you want to sell your business someday? And how does it sound to you? Like in your gut check, if you're like, try on each of the versions and just see how that feels to you, and then go from there. So here were the 3 considerations that meant the most to me when I was making this decision, even very recently, between brookeroberts.co versus Brazenist as the business brand. So the first one, and honestly, the big winner, like all the others, I could have been like, I could go either way, maybe. But this one was the clear deciding factor for me. So it was the separation. I knew I needed that personal and business division with my online presence and me needing to be the face and showing up prolifically in lots of different ways for the business. I've talked about my struggle with depression. I'm sure I will discuss it more, but I just knew that for my mental health, I needed that separation. Even though right now the business is just me, I have the freedom to expand my team, to expand the number of people talking on this YouTube channel or hosting the podcast, to expand the people doing trainings inside of our programs and leading our work and travel study abroad programs. All sorts of opportunities exist here where I can then say, oh, I can scale beyond me. I don't have to be there. People aren't expecting me because it's not called Brooke Roberts, it's called Brazenist. And I can curate other amazing people to do that. And I can have some sanity. Another part of this, as I mentioned before, is like thinking about, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Well, in 10 years, I'm going to be almost 50 years old. And I just thought, like, what do I see myself doing as a nearly 50-year-old? And do I see myself being prolific on Instagram or TikTok or obviously 50 other social media platforms that could exist by then? Or do I see a different type of version where I can show up more in the podcasting realm and it not be so front-facing lifestyle driven as if it were just brookeroberts.co. That was just a small thing for me. I was like, what does 50-year-old Brooke think she's going to be doing and what is going to feel right for her? The second was that vision piece. So I have a lot of things and products and things that I just did it, but I have a lot of advisors, if you will. So we is my collective team of advisors. And I want to launch work and travel programs that are built on my background and expertise in study abroad and bring that experience to young people who didn't get a chance to study abroad and give them an opportunity to get a taste of what that experience could have been like while they also maintain their remote job or launch their own business or creative project. I want to create these month-long experiences or brazen adventures, as we call them, Brazen X, and give them this opportunity to have that kind of experience. Feel like those types of programs and experiences just fit better under a business brand than just brookeroberts.co. I feel like people would be more likely to book these package programs under a business brand that seems more established or legit than just like some girl on the internet. And then the last one, which I didn't really go into in depth, the considerations, but it kind of relates to several of them, is that I do want a personal brand, but I want personal brand freedom. And so while some people might tell you that if you build your business around your name, then it gives you all this flexibility and you can talk about whatever you want. But as you'll learn, and as I share more on this podcast and the YouTube channel, and if you join any of my business development programs, you'll learn that identifying a clear niche and topic and industry and target market and ideal clients is going to be super important for growing your business. And if you build your business under your name thinking like, well, tomorrow I can talk about my favorite new knitting pattern, and then the next day I could talk all about my paleo diet, and the next day I could talk about something completely different, and that you'll be able to build a thriving business around that, it's going to be a lot harder because people aren't going to come to you for a thing that they think, oh, I go there because I want content around that. You're going to kind of become a one-hit wonder. They'll find you once, they'll find you for that paleo article or podcast that you did, and then they'll be like, okay, that was it. And they'll look around and be like, oh, that was the only paleo thing she did. And so they'll move on. Whereas if you came to a paleo site and you were like, I'm going to talk about paleo with a smattering of personality and behind the scenes of your life in terms of your knitting hobby or whatever, but mostly you talked about paleo, they're more likely to subscribe. They're more likely to get your freebie opt-in. If you go back to the 4 pillars of a passive income business, they're more likely to want to buy one of your programs and just be part of your ecosystem if they feel like you are there to talk to them about a specific thing. I wanted personal brand freedom, but true personal brand freedom. So I want to be able to be on my Instagram and post pictures of my dog, as I mentioned. And I also want to be able to say, hey, go check out what my business is doing over here, because I have one business over in study abroad and I have another business over here in the online business niche. Or I want to talk, show my travel adventures or show what it's like to be back on the farm in Kansas. I mean, I don't know. I want that freedom to be able to talk and share. I want to talk about politics on my personal account. That gives me personal brand freedom more, I think, than building my business around my name. But that's just my opinion. That's just for me. That's just for Brooke. That was a big consideration for why I chose to go with Brazenist versus my own name. So now that you've heard all of these considerations about building a brand around your personal name versus a business brand, I want to pass the question off to you. What is the best option for you? What brand type do you think you see yourself launching? Or if you've already launched your business or launched your brand, what did you decide to do? Did you decide to go with your name, or did you build out another brand name around that? Remember that the best choice is to simply make a choice. So I don't want you to, like me, wring your hands for months, maybe even years, because I had the idea for Brazenist back in late 2017. So yeah, it's been a minute since I've actually done anything with it. The best choice is the one you're going to take action on. And remember that you can always change it. So I would just say, I'm going to make a choice right now. I'm going to commit to it for 6 months or a year, and then reassess after that time period and decide if this feels good, if it's working for me, or if I want to pivot and either launch that business brand or launch that personal brand and pivot to a personal brand. So both are great options. And don't forget to go and download the 30-day online income roadmap. It's completely free. It's at brazenist.com/roadmap, and it's going to take you step by step on how to start earning an income online in the next 30 days. Get on it, get out there, let's take some action, and let's see what you can create in the next 4 weeks. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, give me a like on this video. Please hit that subscribe button and help me start growing this channel, growing this podcast. I read every single comment and review that you guys leave. So thank you so much for those of you who've been leaving comments and leaving reviews. It means so much to me that you would even spend this much time with me hanging out, talking about biz, brands, being your own boss. I love it. So thank you for being here. And remember that every day you postpone a dream, you weaken it a little. So get out there and make some magic happen. Cheers.